This is my goofy dog. Just look at him. He's so awesome. But every day without fail, I find myself saying the same old thing. Hey, did you feed the dog? Did you feed the dog?
No.
Hey, did you feed the dog? Hey, did you feed the dog?
Did you feed the dog?
Did you feed the dog? Hey, hon, did you forget to feed Wicket this morning?
I did.
You did forget or you did feed him?
Yeah.
So, to make a very simple fix overly complicated, I decided to design something on the computer, and this is what I came up with. It's basically just a sliding switch that reveals one side or the other. I figured I'd use a light-colored wood, like maple, to represent daytime, and a dark one like walnut to represent nighttime. And since the rodent gets fed twice a day, this can be used to let others, or in this case, me, know if he's been fed already. Alright, let's see if we can do this. I start off by marking out the width for each of the panels that I'll need. Then over at the bandsaw, I can resaw off a piece of cherry, walnut, and maple. With the 3 panels cut out, I can feed them into the drum sander and get them all to the proper thickness. This removes all of the bandsaw marks as well as makes each of them perfectly flat. I grabbed the walnut and the maple panels and trued up one edge using the crosscut sled. Then I could glue them together and form the main back panel of the switch. Next, I grabbed the leftover chunk of cherry and then I ripped it down on the table saw into multiple pieces. Then each of those got ripped down even further into what will become the frame. Then over at the router table, I could make a rabbit in each piece. And without having to adjust the bit or the fence, I could simply flip each piece and run it through again to make the groove for the sliding section. At this point, the back panel was dry, so I could true up one edge over at the jointer. And then, using a flat edge as a reference, I could trim it to the correct width on each side. And then again to its final height. I decided to add a tiny round over to the frame since there will be lots of fingers running over these edges. Then to cut the miters on the frame, I snapped in my framing jig onto my crosscut sled and clamped it in place. Then I could cut one end, test fit it and mark the length, and make the second cut using the other side of the jig, and that way I know it's exactly 90 degrees. Once I had the frame cut out, I could do a quick test fit and then go ahead and glue it up. But I could only glue up 3 of the pieces because I have to leave a way for the sliding panel to get in there. So I just used the 4th piece to hold things square as I get them all together. Once the 3 pieces of the frame dried up, I could put a bead of glue around the rabbit and drop in the bottom. Next, I passed the cherry panel through the drum sander so I could sneak up on the perfect fit for it to slide in the groove. Now I'm trimming it to its final height. And here I step up through a couple more sanding grits so I can get it nice and smooth. I slide it in just over halfway and then I mark where the edge should be. And then trim off the excess over at the miter saw. I put it in place and I test sliding it back and forth a few times, and once I'm satisfied, I cross the point of no return and I glue on the final piece of the frame. And to hide any mistakes, I just put a tiny bit of glue over the miters and I mash in some cayenne pepper. Now to make the handle, I start by joining the face of the walnut scrap that I had, squaring up one of the ends, and then cutting out a small piece of it on the table saw. Then I took the small piece over and I chamfered both sides over at the router table. Now the other end of the maple panel had these bird's eyes as well as a dark stripe of grain going through it. I thought it would look neat if I capped the handle with a bit of this, so I cut out a tiny piece of it and I glued it on. And once it was dry, I could sand everything flush over at the disc sander. At this point, the frame was dry and ready for splines, but this is where I screwed up. The fence on my jig moved and my cut was way off center. So, after I wiped all my tears, I decided to go ahead and widen all the spline cuts and just make them oversized. Then I had to get pretty surgical on the cuts, but I managed to square them all up by using a small chisel. After this, I cut down and glued in some fat walnut splines. When they all dried, I could cut off the excess on the bandsaw and then smooth everything out using the belt and disc sanders. And now I was ready to glue on the handle. Next, I took a few minutes to heat up my brand, and then I could leave my mark on the back. For a finish, I decided just to use some Danish oil since it's super easy to apply and it makes my hands smell wonderful for the rest of the day. And here's the finished product. It really turned out great. Now, even if you don't have a dog, there's lots of ways you can use something like this. For example, put it on your dishwasher. Are the dishes clean or dirty? Or how about, did you take your ultra expensive placebo sugar vitamin today? Or did you get the junk mail yet? But for us, we're going to use it so that anyone can quickly and easily glance over and see if the little fuzzball has been fed. Once we feed him in the morning, we just flip the switch so that we know that the next feeding time will be at dinner. So, since using our switch, our did you feed the dog problem has been completely solved. However, we have noticed he's been getting fatter for some reason. Not quite sure why though. Well, see you next time. Thanks for watching. It just exploded. Crap.
Did you feed the dog?
Wow, that was really loud.
Sorry. So don't do that loud?
No, don't do it that loud. That was like creepy loud.